Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot Connection with the weekly comic book roundup. We've already covered this week's X-Men books as well as Avengers-related titles. So now we're going to cover this week's Spider-Man title, and as well as Outlawed tie-ins, and finally this week's DC titles. Kicking things off, though, we've got Miles Morales' Spider-Man number 19. Where we left off, Miles once again found himself in the clutches of the Assessor, the same shadowy figure after facing a clone of himself. The Assessor being the same shadowy figure that had captured Miles a few earlier in the series, and for lack of a better word, basically tortured him incessantly, looking to see what the limitations of his abilities. Also, a handful of Miles' schoolmates were arrested by agents of Cradle. So the issue begins at the Cradle Operations Center in downtown Brooklyn. The students who were arrested, as well as a congresswoman, are not happy with Cradle at the moment. Back with the Assessor and Miles, however, turns out Miles isn't the only prisoner that the Assessor has. He also has Miles' Uncle Aaron, the Prowler. And it's explained that yes, the Spider-Man that Miles fought is basically a clone, referred to in this case as Asset 42, a proprietary technology that they have that DCeased has developed for Client U. Turns out Client U is none other than Ultimatum. And so, but back at the Cradle Operations Center, they have an unexpected visitor. Captain Steve Rogers, who's been contacted by the Congresswoman and has more than a few harsh words for the Cradle operatives. Back with Miles and Ultimatum, Ultimatum reveals his big plan. He's going to, as he puts it, take ownership of Brooklyn. He's going to kill every single criminal in the borough that even has an ounce of leadership potential. Every foreign don, every dirty cop ringleader, every trap lord with a project building. Got a list 100 names long. Explaining exactly why his goblin drug is so cheap. And why he's been forcing on people to turn them into goblinoids. My Ultimatum further explains that the drug synthesized from the Green Goblin's blood, when activated, turns people into slaves, or soldiers, or whatever he needs them to be. And tonight, everyone in Brooklyn that's had a taste is going to turn into a monster that will kill at his command. As he puts it, by morning there will be another gangster above the rank of corner boy left to even think about challenging him. Ultimatum then lets Miles in on a little secret. His identity. Miles Morales. The original Miles Morales of Earth 616. And he knows exactly what Miles, they're multiversal counterparts of each other. and that Miles has to go back. The Miles we know has to go back. And some of his men are already working on bringing Miles' parents there, and that's also why he's got Prowler. However, Miles' parents have overpowered Ultimatum's men, and they're coming for Ultimatum. Back with Cap and Cap, the Congresswoman, and his classmate, and Miles' classmates. Cap has managed to get them all everyone released. He explains that yeah, you're out of this jam, but you're still going to deal with Cradle at your school, and you guys are going to have to figure that how to handle that one yourselves. However, he also thinks they'll make wise choices. And then he, says, goes on to add, he's been accused of being a starry-eyed idealist, but in reality, he's been around enough years and seen enough horrible, horrible things that it's a constant battle not to be cynical. He continues adding that committed, involved young people like these make it a lot easier to not be cynical, and then he thanks them, which of course sends quite a shock of pride through Miles' classmates. Back with Miles and Uncle Aaron, turns out that Uncle Aaron's been playing possum, and he throws a small explosive at Ultimatum's feet, and Aaron and Miles beat feet to get out of there, running into Asset 42 as well as some of Ultimatum's goons. Miles handles Asset 42 while Prowler handles the goons. And Miles kind of just lets loose on 42. And as they break out of Ultimatum's building, they discover they're surrounded by goblinoids. And that is where the issue ends. Which brings us to... I'm actually going to switch this up a little bit. Champions, number 1. So, for those who might not recall, have been watching the roundup, earlier this year, a one-shot was released entitled Outlawed. In the one-shot, it turns out that a senator is proposing a law to limit the actions of teenage superheroes at a basically a teenage UN type thing at Kamala Khan's school. There's an attack, and Kamala is seemingly crushed, but as Kamala, not Miss Marvel, is seemingly crushed, but when part of the building is damaged. The senator's law is passed. He even this opposite name it Kamala's law in honor of Kamala Khan. The issue is we begin in Brooklyn with Miles Morales narrating about how it's weird being a young superhero. Adding that, society's obsessed with youth. People pay millions to look younger, feel younger. Young people decide what's cool and what's not. At the same time, young people are seen as incompetent. And, in fact, Miles adds that he feels a lot of the time people assume he's an adult behind the mask until he opens his mouth, until he says something. But so many adults seem to think that the youth are incapable of making their own decisions, even though they're the ones who have to live with them. Sometimes it seems like kids and adults live in two different realities. And Miles wonders if when he's an adult, he'll remember the feeling, and if he'll treat young people differently because he remembers how it feels to be one. Arriving at school, Miles hears that the champions are issuing a statement soon. Also, new dress code has apparently gone into effect, stating that any garments or materials that promote teen vigilantism are no longer allowed in the school. Anyway, there's a communique is released by the champions with Kamala Khan basically putting out live as Miss Marvel, explaining that they say the law is about their safety, but no one seems to care about their safety when adults are doing harmful things all over the world, hurting our communities, our environment, our future. The champions have always been about standing up against what's wrong, standing up for people who can't always stand up for themselves, and doing the work that the adult superhero community is too busy fighting among themselves to do. The bottom line is, the world still needs champions, so the champions will endure, and so will other young heroes. They will be the generation that refuses to accept injustice. They will be the generation that speaks out. They will be the generation that stands up, even if that makes them the outlaw generation. However, Miles' friend Jamila, yeah, no, she ain't having it. She straight up says the champions caused the disaster at Kamala's school. Having been there, she saw it. They are dangerous, so she's going to start a Cradle Junior League. And so Jamila and one of the other students get into a brief fight, and we find out later that the two of them got suspended for a day. But people were interested in joining Jamila's Cradle Junior League, so... And Spidey gets caught Miles gets caught briefly in a sting operation by the NYPD, basically trying to catch it, bring in teen heroes themselves, so the Cradle isn't basically running rampant through the streets. A bit of a turf war between the two organizations. Turns out that Miles is on his way to a meeting of the champions and allied teen heroes, including Squirrel Girl, Moon Girl, Starling, and various others. But Ironheart donated some of her tech to help with the meeting. But Moon Girl's not entirely pleased with the fact that Kamala made her statement before consulting with everyone else. Starling and Dust both have some words to say, a few things to say. Starling blaming everything on Vision, Dust adding that, maybe Miss Marvel can't really call herself a leader when she should have kept the Viv under control. Patriot then adds that Kamala's laws put sanctions on all their side hustles, bank accounts, everything. They can't do so much as open a Please Fund Us page, which means that he can't get money for basic expenses like equipment repair and supplies. Then the approved mentor loophole is brought up, and we found out that Falcon has actually registered and has an approved mentor, Sam Wilson, the Falcon. But Starling also points out that the approved mentor list, all the good heroes already have mentees, and no one wants to get stuck working with D-Man. Adding Who cares about the law? But as the meeting starts slowly devolves into argument, Cradle agents show up, led by Justice, formerly of the New War, of the formerly, currently, I'm not really sure what. Occasionally, the New Warriors, formerly of the Avengers. But yeah, fight breaks out between the champions and Cradle forces. The AI Natalie informs Miles that there's a subway tunnel behind one of the walls, and he gets Bombshell to blow a hole through the wall so that they can escape. And as they're leaving, Kamala ends the transmission and realizes that someone sold them out. Wasp gets captured, as does Bombshell. However, before they can, and while Miles and Nova are going to try and save them, they get teleported away by Pinpoint before they can. With Starling explaining that, yeah, it sucks we left the two of them behind, but we don't want to leave you guys behind too. And a handful that haven't been captured, well, they're going to figure out how to get everyone back, including Locust and Snowguard. In the aftermath of the fight with the champions, some of the Cradle agents are discussing the operation, and one of them asks how they got the intel. An encrypted message, anonymous, based on the signatures and syntax, is from a synthezoid, leading the Cradle operative agents to figure out that there was the Vision. And he's doing this anonymously so as not to make his friend, without letting his friends know, the other members of the security community know what he's doing. However, watching this is Vision. And that is where the issue ends. Which brings us to last month's issue of Magnificent Miss Marvel. I actually somehow missed this when it came out. But yeah, so here's Miss Marvel number 14, or Magnificent Miss Marvel number 14. Which actually takes place before Champions number 1, but I didn't want to split the two issues of Miss Marvel up, so basically, Miss Marvel, or Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, is comatose in the hospital. She's kind of waking up, but yeah. She has some visions of past, of elements of herself, and her family's dealing. Some of them blame the champions for what happened. Others are just like, hey, bad things happen. It's not always someone's fault. One thing that needs to be kept in mind is that Kamala Khan's parents actually don't know she's Miss Marvel. A couple of her friends from school show up that know the truth. She has dreams about, she has more dark dreams. Also, her friend Bruno shows up, just wanting her to, get to feeling better. All of her dreams seem to also involve whichever friend just visited. Miles comes to visit. But while Miles is visiting, Kamala wakes up, makes some decisions, and thanks Miles for coming to visit. She explains that her mind struggles and her body hurts, but through the pain and the haze, she made a decision. stand up for her friends. First brings us to James number 15, or number 1, and then to Magnificent Miss Marvel number 15. So, it's Kamala's first day back at school. She's, of course, being hounded by reporters. She's now kind of a big deal. And, of course, she's welcomed back by the faculty and her friends, and, well, yeah. She gets into a brief argument with her friend Zoe, who actually kind of agrees with Kamala's law. We don't hear much of the argument. We do see a panel of it. Meanwhile, Cradle is patrolling the area, trying to find the fugitive Miss Marvel. One of them does suggest using facial profiling or facial recognition to potentially track down Miss Marvel, but there are quite a few things that are wrong about it. One, she's a polymorph, so facial recognition is. Once it's suggested, Dum Dum Dugan says, "I could tell you that what you're talking about won't work because the community backlash would make our job harder. Could point out what an absurd farce it would be rounding up 10,000 girls to catch one. Could point out they're dealing with a polymorph, which makes facial recognition useless." But what it all boils down to is that's not how Dugan does things. So meet with Bruno. Turns out, so Bruno and Kamala kissed recently before she went unconscious, and they need to discuss it. And they start to, and Bruno saying they kissed, Kamala saying we sure did, and it was nice, it sure was. They both say but though, so. They decide they're going to figure things out. Things between them are always going to be weird. So let's just keep them weird without the kissing, at least for. However, then Kamala learns that there's some flooding near some Jersey City residents trapped by flooding. So she changes into her costume and goes to save them. And is promptly attacked by Cradle. And yeah, they really don't stand a chance against her. But Dugan does hit her with a stun baton and does briefly knock her out. That or she is really good at playing possum, and she knocks him off of her, slams their jet into the water, and heads on out. When the people she saved her ask which way she went, well, let's just say none of them are all that cooperative with Cradle. And that is where the issue ends. We also did get an explanation of what Cradle stands for in Champions number 1. Child Hero Reconnaissance and frack. Because Squirrel wrote a really great crack about Child Hero Reconnaissance and Disruption Law Enforcement. With Squirrel Road mentioned, should it be Cradle? They just pretend that that H isn't there. Alright. And so we move on to this week's DC title, starting with Justice League number 54, a death metal tie-in. Where we left off, Hawkgirl, Nightwing, Detective Chimp were going off to find John Jones, and also release the Legion of Doom from Perpetua's throne. And along for the ride kind of sort of was Lex Luthor, whether they like it or not. So we begin with a boom tube opening, and Starfire and Cyborg step out of it. And what they see is something horribly unfamiliar. They're set upon by apparently a mutated King Shark, a mutated Killer Croc, and I'm guessing also a mutated Professor Pig. When Nightwing, Detective Chimp, Lex, and Hawkgirl all show up, with Lex explaining that Dr. Arkham used the Wasteland's radiation to create twisted experiments based on Batman's enemies. They must have escaped after Arkham's demise. But everyone agrees that working with Lex is a terrible idea. We've already learned that Jean is facing off against a combination of himself and Batman from the Dark Multiverse, Mindhunter. And so we see some of that, the mental portion of that fight. And we learn a bit about Mindhunter's past. He stole DNA from his Earth's Martian Manhunter. Abilities of Superman plus invisibility and shapeshifting. But those are not their greatest weapon. That's not their greatest weapon, is it? Rather, the telepathy is. And so Bruce is trying to basically get into the telepathic connection that Jean has with the League. And Hawkgirl actually feels it. As they're making their way through, they discover a valley full of sleeping Starros. So they continue on with Detective Chimp and Cyborg kind of catching up a bit. And Dick and Corey catching up. In fact, this is the first time Corey's seen Dick since he had been shot in the head by DCeased. And he explains it's kind of part of why he volunteered for the mission he's on, is maybe if he becomes the Nightwing everyone else remembers, he'll remember too. However, then, suddenly, for a moment, Starfire looks like she did back in the New Teen Titans days. Then he hears a voice in his head calling him Master Richard, telling him he must wake up. And he does. In the Batcave, with Batgirl and Alfred standing over him. The bullet grazes his skull. And Batman's taking KGBeast back to Blackgate at this very moment. However, then it becomes New 52 Nightwing. Then it becomes Nightwing from when he was Batman. Then pre-Hush, post-Killing Joke, Nightwing. Then pre-Crisis on Infinite Earth's Nightwing, and then being Robin. And we see everyone is dealing with a situation like this. The Starros have awoken. And then, but Lex manages to save them, or at least to save Dick. And Lex and Nightwing now stand against a mind-controlled Cyborg, Detective Chimp, Starfire, and Hawkgirl. That is where the issue ends. Which brings us to our next selection for the week. DCeased Dead Planet number 4. Where we left off, the surviving heroes of Earth were planning a daring mission. Steal the Mobius chair. Let Cyborg sit on it, so he can figure out how to get to the life equation and cure the anti-life virus. The issue begins in Ivy's garden. Boom tube opens, and Detective Chimp, John Constantine, and Mr. Miracle step through. But they're trying to figure out how can they entice Metron so that they can potentially get him off his chair. Well, turns out that Constantine has got the crystal ball about of Xanadu. Which would tell him about the future. And so they decide everyone that's able to go throughout in space should probably go on the mission, but they're wondering where Green Lantern is. So they find her in Gotham, dealing with keeping Ollie contained. And so it's decided that Dr. Fate will keep Green Arrow protected, basically. So, and Wonder Woman's also going to go, as will Mary Marvel. When they arrive, Orion starts beating up on Mr. Miracle. Brotherly love, ain't it great? Until Superman knocks him out in one punch. And also, Highfather wishes to show Mr. Miracle's son, who has been staying on New Genesis for the last 5 years. But Highfather suggests, hey, you need to take him back, raise him yourself, be the influence I should have been, be the influence on him that I should have been on you. In the remains of Apocalypse, they're getting ready. Our heroes get ready to trap the God of Knowledge. And it goes about as well as one might expect. However, as he's able to figure out how to get past the trap, but Mary Marvel uses the wisdom of Solomon to convince him otherwise, saying, if they fail to contain the anti-life virus and death wins, what happens to knowledge? And Metron basically states that they should have opened with that instead of an ambush. So Cyborg sits on the chair. He needs to recode his blood. The life equation is there. And so the heroes, or Metron looks into Xanadu's crystal ball, hands it back to the heroes, and simply says he can't be here. He can't be there, and says he must leave now. Dinah noting that he took one look at the future and ran the hell away. And so here, our heroes return to Earth, while Black Racer you'll want to witness what comes next. The cooled molten core of Apocalypse cracks, and death itself uttered 2 words. Dark side isn't. On New Genesis, Highfather felt something change. as he felt his brother unborn. Highfather and Darkseid are brothers, after all. Darkseid arrives, promptly crushes Orion, and that is where the issue ends. Which brings us to our final book of the week. American Vampire 1976, issue 1. I get the feeling that I probably should have tried to track down any previous American Vampire titles before this, but, well, yeah. So, we begin in the Virginia colony in 1741. The cherry tree. And a couple men go to... I think I think we're trying to suggest that this is the cherry tree that supposedly George Washington cut down. You know, I cannot tell. You know, did you cut the tree down? Oh, I can't tell a lie. It was me. They try to uproot these two colonists try to uproot the tree. And there's something attached to the roots, some living-ish thing that says it will come for this land, come for what was promised, before you get taken an axe to the head. Let's see. Then begin being Skinner's Suite. Stunt rider. About to do his bit. Riding through an obstacle course. Chainsaws, fire, chemicals, shooting a bullseye. Goes to get his money. Turns out the people he's working for, some of theirs got stolen. An albino alligator they were trying to breed, so they don't have all the money that he's promised. So he says, "Just give me what you have." Off the Alaskan coast, Felicia Book, vice director and former prime director of the Vassals of the Morning Star, is at the Code White outpost about to conduct the final test. Whether or not it worked is unknown. In New York, a man named Agent Poole tracks down Travis Kidd, a former member of the Vassals of the Morning Star, who's described as a rockabilly vampire hunter. Of course, he's in the last place anyone would expect a rockabilly vampire hunter to be in 1976. A disco, where he's DJing. Turns out Poole's on the... This Poole, right? Yeah. Poole's on the trail of a killer called the Peeling Man. Severs his victims' feet, hangs them up, and peels the flesh while they're still alive. All of his victims have been former members of the VMS, some of the oldest and last. Apparently the beast, as they put it, is ready to rise and take the world, the original evil. In the last 8 years, it's infected thousands of people. How, they don't know, but they're everywhere. The creature army is legion, led by the beast's protector, the Grey Trader. Made up of 6 species of ancient bloodlines, each twisted and mutated to serve. It has the forces it needs. There's only one thing left for it to get, and that's what the Peeling Man is looking for. And it turns out that the kid has got a solar lamp that he's using at the disco. A disco frequented by vampires. One of the vampires was a platform boot at the solar lamp, but it turns out that kid also did up the floor lights. Back with oh Jesus, what was his friggin' name? Back with Skinner's Suite. He's in his home, a long ago stolen boxcar, and he stole the albino alligator. But he's about to have company, the original owners of that albino alligator. But him being mortal and no longer immortal, well, yeah. It's not exactly the best fight until old ally shows up, killing the three rednecks. Turns out she needs him to help. She needs his help robbing a train. The Freedom Train, which explained it's celebrated the bicentennial of the U.S. President Ford approved and authorized a ceremonial train across the country carrying important pieces of American history. Judy Garland's red ruby slippers, Edison's first light bulb, Abe Lincoln's hat, 15 cars full of priceless Americana. The steam train running on tracks that Skinner used to prowl when he was a vampire. And one of the artifacts contains a map to the meeting place of the Council of Firsts. And it's in the last car. That's all. They don't know what it is, only that it's in the last car, so they need to steal the whole car. Of course, Skinner does ask the dumb question of, what makes you think we could do that? And, well, Pearl, his guest, does say, you did it before, and we're standing in the car itself. But he does add that they're going to need people. More than just Pearl. Well, turns out Pearl's found one person to help him so far. Jim Book. And that's not going to be someone happy reunion for Skinner. And that is where the issue ends. And that's it for this week's Roundup. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying, live long and rock hard.